Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Context is King. I'm Rebecca Brayton, and with me as always is WatchMojo founder and CEO Ashkan Karbasfrooshan to discuss his newfound wisdom as a founder for his older bosses. I don't think I worded that well, but anyway. So now that you have been running a company for a long time, have you come to appreciate anything about bosses that you had in your life?
I always actually appreciated my old bosses, even though others I worked with didn't necessarily do so as much. But I would say, specifically three things in particular. The first one is, it's really not about you. I remember one time when I worked at the search engine, one morning I got it there all eager for like the Monday morning meeting where we were a bunch of guys, and my boss looked at me and he kind of was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "I came for the meeting." He's like, "Yeah, no." He's like, "You shouldn't be in that meeting." And I was like, I sat there at my desk the whole day, probably downloading Paul Oakenfold sets using on Napster. So that's around the time this was at. And I was just like, oh my God, what did I do? And I was just going through it. And it was a lot of like, what did I do? What did I say? What are they saying about me? Like they're going to get, and I was like 21 years old out of school there. Like I could have not existed. Business would have run just with or without me fine. And so later on, like weeks later, I kind of was talking to him, and I said, "Hey, you know, this kind of left me a bit concerned, distraught." I didn't even know what I was talking about. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that." He's like, "No," he's like, "that had nothing to do with you." He's like, "I was going to yell at a bunch of my executives, and you were this like young kid out of school. I didn't want you to see that and hear that." I was like, "Oh." And so that was like a very small but anecdotal thing to go, as individuals, we always tend to, myself, even then and now, we look at it from our perspective, but that's one.
It's not about you.
It's not about, like, he has bigger fish to fry. He doesn't want you to be the exposed. And like I say, somebody's got to do the yelling. Like, as much as it's good to be. Anyway, I'll move on to another point I was going to make after. Two, you don't know the conversations that your boss, he or she, is having with others. Throughout the 13 years I've ran WatchMojo, we've gone through cycles where I was the punchline, I was like, lionized, idolized as like this guru who figured it out, to I was ridiculed again for not selling the business and keep investing, to again, oh my God, he was the genius who didn't bet the farm on Facebook when everybody else crashed and burned. And I'm the same guy. You guys are the problem, that you worship the entrepreneur too much when you should just be more cool-headed, and you shit on the entrepreneur when you should just empathize with, maybe I don't see what he's seeing. So the point though is, so people could criticize me, and they should. Criticism is good, but like some people don't understand that, like, let's say you're talking to an investor or a media company that wants to just basically, either the investor wants to give you a lot of money to build, the company wants to give you a lot of money to basically put in your pocket to go do your own thing, stay, leave, whatever. And you turn it down and you come and you tell the team, we got to do this or that. And the team doesn't know the other conversations you're having. So they're just like, well, why? And this and that. And you're like, I sometimes wish they saw that other component. Now, you know why you make those decisions. So you kind of tell the people with the money, I'm not going to be tempted by that. And you also understand why there is some truth and merit to what they're saying. Sometimes those people on the outside can point out to mistakes you're making, tactical or strategic, that when you come back with the team, without saying, hey, these guys who have all this money are saying we should do this, because that's not what makes what they say right. It's just that they're outside. They see a lot of, they have a different vantage point. So what I learned, and my old boss definitely and previously, is you don't know the conversations they're having. You don't see the criticism. So when they come back and they say something, it's because they were probably put through the grinder by people, and this guy now is coming internally and try to kind of like, not rectify, but he or she is trying to kind of say, shit, if 5 people say the house is burning, maybe it's not burning, they're just at a barbecue restaurant, but maybe, just maybe it's burning, so he's trying to put out some fires. And there's no real way you could say that. You can't come out and say what I just did to 50 people staring at you going, this guy's crazy. You know what I mean? And in my case in particular, not ever having had a real board of directors, those are the conversations I have to get a sense of, are we going in the right direction? I don't care about their money. It's just they're the ones that are going to tell me, you're driving off a cliff, boy. You might want to get back on the road. So that I've seen it a lot, like everywhere. And the third one is, I am horrible with money. I'm great at generating revenue and creating value, writing stories.
This is what you want to hear from your boss.
No, but I'm not really good with costs, right? So I actually, one of the reasons I liked and respected my old boss, even though a lot of people didn't, was because I thought we made a good team, that he could focus on the costs and I could focus on the revenue, and I recognize that. But so one thing that I appreciate now more is that, technically, $1 out the door as an expense, saving that is just as good as generating $1. Now, I don't really still believe that, because you do need to invest. And when you grow, there's a lot of waste and you throw money at things that don't make sense. But I do get that a bit more, that, you know what, it's true. If you're spending money, you're killing yourself trying to get $1, but if you spent $100, you got to kill yourself 10,000 times to get that 100. So those are 3 things I've learned in terms of like from the boss type of thing. But if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, what are the 3 things? I'm going to give you 3 parallels of like ultimately like the acid test of like, what I call entrepreneurship. And we'll start with opportunities, then we'll go with people, and then yourself. So I would say in terms of opportunities, big picture is the institutional imperative, and I've touched on that. If everybody's getting in line to jump off a bridge and going right, don't go right, because those near-term profits evaporate, and you might want to consider what's on the left. So that's big picture. 2, I would say when it comes to people, again, I think we're going to be moving away from this period of bullshit PC, just not wanting to hurt people's feelings. And I'm not saying that's just myself. I see it now. Donald Trump is a microcosm. There's a lot of this stuff going on around the world where balance. What do I mean by balance? Balance is the most important thing, and it's hard to achieve, but and context TV is work, life, play balance. You never get balance. You strive for balance. But what I mean by that is, as manifested through, it's great for everybody to get their point of view and to be respectful and all that, but you sometimes need to cut the bullshit and tell people that's off, and you got to tell them they're wrong, and you got to be, if you're not tough enough to make tough decisions. I've grown 10 years of experience and maturity in the last year because I finally learned to say no. I finally learned to say, this is not helpful. You're not helpful. We're going to do this. And I realize you may not appreciate this, but I got to care about the greater good. So you need that balance, that it's good to be polite and diplomatic, but that's vegetable lasagna factory. You need to come up with bold, creative ideas, and then somebody's got to take a shot on that. Not everybody's going to touch the ball. Not everybody's even going to be on the field. And if people don't like that, they shouldn't be on your team. And then the third one, what do you think is the third one? Where I'm going. We start off with opportunities, that in terms of like people, but say to others. And the last one is more people, but self, like you alone as the entrepreneur, as a test. What is the one thing I always say this is the most important thing?
You say a lot of things.
A lot of things. Persistence. Again.
Yeah, that's what I figured. But
I mean, you get a lot of people who show up and they want to achieve something overnight. So you yourself, if you are like asking yourself, do I want to go into it? You got 10 years? You got 5? That's what you're signing up for, So those are the 3 tips that I've learned from others who were in the shoes. And the 3.
Make sure you have 10 years.
Not 10 years, but make sure you got 3 to 10 years at least. Yeah, definitely not. Less than 3 years, you're kidding yourself. Unless you're really lucky and,
have a really great idea.
And execution.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think of Ash's words of wisdom, and we'll see you next time.